Welcome to Season 4 of Shift Out Loud. This podcast is your invitation to play bigger. What does that mean? It means letting go of the self-limiting beliefs that keep you from stepping into your most powerful version of yourself. My favorite conversations are with people who have made that shift and they move about the world differently because of it. Their setbacks served as a catalyst to change their circumstances, make new decisions, and shift their course. And I hope it inspires you to do the same. So listen in, get inspired, and know I'm right here cheering you on. Hey there, I'm Tracy Spears, speaker, author, advocate, and head cheerleader for anyone wanting to play bigger. My guest this week is Makenna Held. Makenna Held bought La Pitchoune, Julia Child's summer home in Provence, sight unseen in 2016 when she came across a listing in the New York Times. Today, she operates the home as a vacation rental and the courageous cooking school by Recipe Kick. She was the host of La Pitchoune, Cooking in France on HBO Max and Magnolia Network, a 7-part show that featured Makenna and her team as they welcomed guests to their recipe-free cooking school. I can't wait to talk about that. A graduate of New York University, NYU, and Smith College, Makenna is also the founder of Your Leadership Recipe and Conscious Commerce, 2 frameworks for building businesses and leadership paradigms that are hell-bent on shifting away from the problems of patriarchal capitalism and into a more holistic ethos of joy, presence, and play. Well, that's a great way to introduce somebody. Makenna Held, come on in. So glad to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Tracy. It's a pleasure.
I have been so excited to have this conversation with you because I keep picturing somebody just looking through the New York Times and changing their life. But before we do that, tell the audience a little bit about you. Where are you from?
Absolutely. I'm an American who emigrated in 2016 to France, and I consider myself very much an immigrant now. I'm an immigrant to France, and I've lived here, gosh, that's almost 10 years now, right? I'm at year 9 this spring. So there you go. Yeah, it's a wild thing. It's been a wild journey coming from the U.S. and moving sight unseen to the south of France. I'm not sure I would recommend it to everyone, but I'm not mad I did it.
I think everybody listening is like, oh my God, that's what I want to do for a couple of reasons. One is our political climate, but that's the dream, isn't it? Like to go live.
What political climate? It's totally fine right now. It's totally
Yeah.
normal, right? Like everything's totally status quo, easy peasy.
Yes. And we all want to be sitting where you are, or most of us do. But kind of you said you grew up in the United States. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in California and in Colorado. So
Okay.
my early childhood was in California. My kind of middle grades to high school was in Colorado.
So you're sitting in Colorado thinking one day I want to live in Provence? I mean, like, how does that happen?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really interesting. It was really interesting for me. It was never. It never seemed feasible to live in France. I had this belief system that it was very hard to get a visa. I had this belief system that it was almost impossible to live there as a foreigner because that's what I had been told as a child once. So I just kind of like absorbed that and let it sit. I realized very quickly as I got older that not everything I was told as a child was correct. And so I had this moment that I just was like, maybe I could live in France. And it was all catalyzed by the movie The 100-Foot Journey. And I've just found it so charming. And I just loved that this Indian family randomly ended up in the south of France and opened up an Indian restaurant across the street from a Michelin-starred restaurant. It's this darling story. It's beautiful. It's a love story. It's very, very cinematic. It's all about food.
Is Helen Mirren in this?
Yes, she is.
I know this. I loved this.
Yeah, that's a great movie. And, for me, that seeing that movie catalyzed this, I want to live in France and cook for people. And that came out about a year before the article in the New York Times. So that was like the September before, I think. It was a whole year because I was living in Door County, Wisconsin, taking care of my ailing grandmother who died that following February. So it would have been 2014 when that movie came out. Thought, okay, let's move to France someday and cook for people. And I just kind of let that sit there. And one day I was up at 4:00 in the morning, like sometimes you are, scrolling the internet, which you shouldn't do. Worked out into my favor this time, though. I got to say, sometimes maybe it's not so bad to be scrolling the internet at 4:00 in the morning. And I stumbled upon a listing for the house that was in the New York Times that had been shared to the Smith Alum Forum. And people were like going crazy about how cool it'd be to own her house. And there was crowdfunding talk, and there was people, like 30 people wanted to go in together. And I was like, whoa, that's a lot of cooks in a very small kitchen. Maybe one person could buy it. And I just kind of fell down that rabbit hole and chased it to the end and ended up with it. It is a fantastical story, but it also is just about being dogged and having the right connections and just not giving up.
So this is Julia Child's, literally, it's her summer home, right?
Yes. Yes.
And okay, I have to ask a couple more because I want to hear all about that home and all the things. But were you naturally a risk taker as a kid? Do you come by, are your parents always pushing you to do things? Grandma has an influence on you, I assume. So tell me a little bit about that.
Absolutely. I would say that my propensity for risk has always actually been pretty low. And while this felt big and brave, it didn't feel risky. It felt like a sure slam dunk.
Is that
It just
just, yeah, I mean, is that because you just feel like when you know, you know?
I just figured that there had to be a way to monetize and have a cooking school. And the previous owner had a very successful cooking school. So there was a blueprint there already. And it had worked really well. And I was able to talk to her and kind of ask her questions about it. And when we discovered that the interest rates were like 1.5%, and we could get a balloon loan, which means you have about 10 years to pay it down, and that the mortgage would have been cheaper than any rent I had ever paid in my adult life. It felt like a no-brainer at that point, and it just seemed possible, and it seemed almost silly not to try to do it.
See. So were you a chef trained? I mean, so tell me a little bit about.
I am now. Yeah, no, I totally bought the house with the plan to open the Courageous Cooking School and run a recipe-free school and do that with my former partner. We're no longer together, but that was the original plan. And in the process of buying a house and moving to France, it became very clear that we weren't as compatible as we thought we were. Kind of all dissolved very quickly once all that happens. There are stressors involved, right? With buying a house like that, moving overseas. And it became very clear that the idea of living in France was appealing to them,
I
but the
see.
actual realities weren't. So I had this total plan in place. It was going to be easy, it was going to be great. And then it all kind of fell apart. And so I had to go get trained. I had to hire a new chef. I had to figure out all of these things very quickly and on my feet.
Were they a chef?
They went to culinary school so that we could open the school together. But I had not been to culinary school. I was going to be like, the person who poured the wine and chatted and cleaned. I was not planning on being a teaching instructor originally. Like, that was not on my bingo card whatsoever. And now I am a culinary instructor who teaches dozens of classes all the time around the world. So funny how those things work out.
That is a huge shift, right? To think about, because there had to be a moment where you're like, oh no, I can't do this. But that's
Oh,
okay. That did happen.
Oh yeah,
Take
many
me.
moments,
Yeah.
hundreds of moments. I would say every moment was an oh no moment for many months. There was problems with the house. There was the fact that the mosaic in the pool was completely crumbling. That had to get fixed. No one wants to swim in a yellow mosaic pool with mosaic tile falling off. It's just oh, it's just not appealing. It's not like the dream, right? And so every step of the way, there was a problem. There was a roofing issue. There was this, there was that. And I was really grateful that I hadn't done it alone and that I had brought in investors because it made it much more feasible. I think if I had just done it by myself and kind of made the plan to just be toot soul all by my lonesome in the project, that it wouldn't have been successful. I've been really lucky to have great business partners, and I've been really lucky to have people who are just as passionate about what we do, even though they're not in the day-to-day operations. They're passionate about what we do, and they care about all of the employees, and they care about us as a unit. That we've been really lucky to have that level of success.
My gosh. I love this. I love everything about this because there's so many shifts happening as you're just telling like your story. But I'm going to kind of stick with this because I know everyone's dying to hear about the school and you call it La Peach now. So thank you for letting me off the hook. La Pitchoune, is that
Good
correct?
job. Yes.
Okay, good. All right.
Yes.
So you live in the house too, right? This is not just for cooking. Are you living in the house?
No, not anymore. I used to. When I first moved to France, I lived in the house. So the house is actually houses. One's a 3-bedroom cottage, and then the other one was like an old 15th century shepherd's cabin that was 2 stories that had been turned into an apartment with a poorly installed turret that created a staircase from the top to the bottom because they originally weren't linked. And when I say poorly constructed, I mean very poorly, with no foundation and something like 14 tons of rock, stone, and cement. So I lived in that little house for a very long time. I actually labored there for 38 hours before I transferred to the hospital. And I lived there for, gosh, I think 3.5 years
Gosh, okay.
in this like tiny 1-bedroom studio kind of situation. And I lived on site and on campus, and it saved overhead, it did all of that. And eventually I moved to another house on the same domain. So in France, there's oftentimes like multiple houses that kind of are near each other, but not right next to each other, but they kind of share a property and they share a driveway. It's called a domain. So I moved to another house on the domain, and then eventually to a village, and then now to where I live in Grasse, which is about 20 minutes from the house. But having a little distance was important. After 3.5 years of your work being right here, like up in your face all the time, and having clients in and out and knocking on your door when they run out of wine. Hey, do you happen to have any more wine at 1 o'clock in the morning? The answer is sure, absolutely, no problem. Once I had a kid, that was like not working anymore. So,
I see.
but
I
we
see.
so we ended up moving away, sadly, because I love the property and I loved living there. But the proximity and hospitality to clients all the time, it's like I talk to my friends who are restaurateurs all the time about this. Like, well, it's not that much harder than a restaurant. And I was like, they come and dine for 2.5 hours and then you're done with them. These people stay with me for a whole week and I live with them basically. It's very intense, but so I'm grateful to have my own space now.
So just for the people that are here in Tulsa, Kathy Taylor is the reason that you and I know each other. So she goes over, and I remember before she was going to go, and she's a very enthusiastic cook. And she was
Yes.
sending all these amazing pictures and just had this unbelievably great experience. So take the listeners through that. Because when you say that they're actually living in the house, like you go to this for a week and
Yes.
you are immersed. So talk about just the experience of somebody if they decide, because we definitely want to sell some of these for the people listening. So if I want to come and cook in Julia Child's kitchen, give me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So when I was building the school, I was really looking for something that wasn't out there already. And I really wanted an immersive culinary experience that could be easily replicated at home. And one of the things that I found really interesting talking to people was there was a lot of complaints about other culinary programs, especially ones that are kind of touristically based, is that it's very hard to replicate a lot of the things you cook. So if you go to some of these, you're cooking like pigeons with plums, and that's beautiful, but that's not something you can really do easily back home in the United States. And I wanted it to be residential because I wanted it to kind of feel like summer camp. I wanted to feel like you really dove deep with people. And I think that kind of when you're put in a pressure cooker for 6 days with people, it forces all sorts of group dynamics. It forces you to kind of look at yourself. It's more than just a cooking school that way. And it is just this really unique experience. And it's something that we continue to do around the world. We don't just do it at Julia's house. We host these kind of all over now in Italy and Croatia and Spain and Mexico. And the whole point is like, how can we take you into an immersive place? Very slow travel, very focused on cooking with local products and the local techniques of that area. So our school is very French inspired because it's recipe free. We're using all sorts of different spices from around the world. So if you're making a ratatouille, you're not going to use herbs de Provence. Despite the fact we are in Provence, we're not going to use herbs de Provence in air quotes, right? In something like a ratatouille, which is a classic use for it. Instead, we'll use it maybe in the creme brulee. Like, yes, we want you to use herbs de Provence, but like somewhere else. We want you to like play with something different. And instead, maybe in the ratatouille, we'll use tomato powder and we'll use, oh, I don't know, grains of paradise, which is often called Ethiopian black peppercorn, but it's not a black peppercorn and it's not exclusively from Ethiopia, but it is like a cardamom adjacent, piney, beautiful thing. So we're using flavors that are traditionally used in French cooking with French techniques. That's very much kind of like my ethos in general about how to approach food and how to make food more interesting is like take something and flip it.
Mm, I see.
Yeah.
Interesting. So there's no recipe? So
There's no recipes. No, there's not a single recipe in the entire school during the entire week, and you will never be able to make the dish you made again. They are sand mandalas, right? They are truly these flashes in the pan that will not be replicated, that cannot be replicated, and that's the whole point. It's like, how can you let go and ignore perfection and just go for something new, different, and delicious? And it's an ethos, right? It's a way of like looking at life. It's a way of looking at the fragility of life. It's the way of kind of celebrating the fact that you could get hit by a piano tomorrow, like falling out of the sky, right? Like these sorts of things happen to people. And like if we're so attached to everything, we kind of lose the magic. And so it's an opportunity to kind of play with magic and just let these beautiful things be beautiful. They are consumed and then they're complete.
So the people that show up there for a week, are they people that that have had a lot of training in cooking? Are they people that are enthusiastic about just wanting to learn for the first time? Kind of give me a sense. Does it matter?
It doesn't really matter. What we
Okay.
find is that we've had people who are like fully trained culinarians who have gone to culinary school, plenty of them, dozens in fact, and have come to us and say they learned more in 1 week with us than they learned in their whole training program at like a year-long professional school. We have people who can literally barely boil an egg. And it really doesn't matter because what we're doing is so different and so playful that ultimately it kind of doesn't make a difference. We're really looking at like this beautiful magic that's occurring. And it's about play. It's about how you interface with the other guests. It's about how you interface with yourself. It's about how you flip an omelet. It's about, do you have that courage? Are you willing to pull the hot food towards you? So it's more focused on how to become a more creative cook,
I
and we
see.
called it the Courageous Cooking School because it was a hat tip to Julia, obviously. And we now realize that it's less about courage and more about creativity. Like courage is a piece of creativity too. Like you have to have the courage to paint the first brush stroke, and you have to have the courage to like make that first omelet and break those eggs, right? But it also is about how can we break out of the norms that we have created for cuisine, because cuisine is cultural and it's geographical and it's based off of preferences of that population. And that's the only reason cuisine exists in these kind of narrow, like this is Korean food and this is French food and this is the south of France cuisine and this is Mediterranean. It has to do with geography, preferences, and culture. And, that's great. And how can we play with it?
Nice. So I'm sitting here thinking, so you're is this born from the oh shit moment where you're now teaching the classes?
No, actually. What's interesting is that it was a decision from the get go to go this way because I had this very clear, it happened very quickly. It was like all downloaded in less than about 5 seconds when I read the article and I said, what would I do if I bought the house? I had this moment of like, I'd run a recipe free cooking school. But the reason why was I didn't want to teach Julia's recipes. I felt like she has done an exquisite job of teaching everybody her way of cooking. She wrote dozens of books. She has hundreds of hours of television. And it felt really weird and almost inappropriate to be reteaching what she did such a good job teaching. It was very much like not the right vibe. And also, it's American cookbook. All of her cookbooks were like pieces of time, right? They're slices of the 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And that is not French cuisine in France. That is French cuisine for Americans. So
I
we had
see.
kind of a Coles to Newcastle situation. It's like those were made for an American grocery store, not for a French market. And I knew I couldn't teach her recipes. And then I didn't have my own recipes. So what about without recipes?
Gosh. And so the shift that the audience is going to be, their mind's going to be blown right now because you have written a cookbook.
Say that I'm not anti-recipe. I think there's a lot of kind of ethos out there that there's this one article that was written after my TV show came out that was like in defense of recipes. And I was like, recipes don't need defending. Everybody has used recipes for eons. Everybody knows recipes have a point and they are useful. Nobody needs to defend them. Just like, there are plenty of people that don't need to be defended because they're kind of the de facto. Same thing with recipes. For me, it was kind of like the notion of what is another way that we can unpack cooking? It's just like in mathematics, the Pythagorean theorem does a very good job of finding the hypotenuse of a triangle or any leg of a triangle, but it can't find a limit. That's what calculus is for. So for me, recipe-free cooking is a little bit like the calculus of cooking. It's a little bit more freeform. It requires a little bit more thought. It requires a little bit more moving forward. It's not rote. Calculus is kind of like that too, right? You write proofs, you have to think through it. It actually requires more brain power. And it also creates better outcomes
Uh-huh.
ultimately. And what I mean by
Yeah.
better is just different, right? Instead of eating the same broccoli the same way 100 times and you start to kind of play with new flavors, you get something different, which makes eating broccoli more enjoyable. And we all know we need our veggies, right? So I love recipes and I wrote a cookbook because I love recipes. And I do think that cookbooks are still useful. They're cultural snapshots and they are like an ethos on paper. But like ultimately, why I think a cookbook fails us, and I love that about mine too, it's going to fail you that in some ways is like if you're at a grocery store and you can't find the ingredient because you don't understand the seasonality of it or your grocery store is out, how do you pivot? You now have maybe 3 of the ingredients already in your basket and you're missing the 4th and you don't know how to riff on that recipe, you're stuck.
Yeah. True. I've been there, done that. So that, but that book. But by the way, I just pre-ordered it. So
Oh, yay. Thank you so much.
it's called Mostly French. Is that right? Yeah. Which
Yes.
I love the title of that. But I want to go back just a bit. So the cookbook, as you are putting those recipes down, when I think about just the average listener listening into this, and what you're giving us is, this sense of creativity in the kitchen that maybe, I don't know. I mean, you know that people are going to mess up your recipe, but you don't even care. So, right, you're detached from that. I'm madly in love with somebody that's a chef right now.
Congratulations. I love that for you. Being
Really
in love
good.
is great.
Yes, it is. And I'm learning a lot. And what I'm learning is I'm watching her be fearless about some of those changes. And she's like, she has no, like, oh, well, this will work out and all that stuff. But I am the opposite of that. I would be wringing my hands about that. So I feel like what you're offering me and the people that would come to your class or the people that would buy your book would just be some freedom, right? Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Freedom and creativity and joy. And ultimately, for me, it's more about the reality that cooking is labor. Like, cooking is labor. And we all have to eat. Someone has to feed us, and we either have to cook for ourselves or we have to hire someone to cook for us, or we have a loved one who cooks for us, right? But those are the only choices to feed ourselves. We cook for ourselves or someone else cooks for us. There is no other choice. Whether you're door dashing, someone else is cooking for you. Whether it's your partner, friend, they're cooking for you, or you have to cook for yourself. And I think that ultimately, like, that amount of labor that people spend in the planning, shopping, cooking, when it comes to recipe based cooking, is trillions of hours a year in the United States alone. And if you can just take the part out of having to write the list, having to find the recipes, having to shop for the ingredients, having to go to the multiple grocery stores, then having to read the recipe, which slows you down, and you've got all of these pieces. If you can eliminate some of that, cooking becomes faster, easier, and you're actually shopping for what's beautiful and in season rather than that like mealy tomato because so and so said you need it in the recipe, right? So if you know that there's these beautiful things out there, but you don't have a recipe for it, people don't buy it. But they're staring at these beautiful tomatoes that are green zebra tomatoes, those are the beautiful green ones with the dark green stripes. And people will look at that and be like, well, I don't know what to do with it, so I'm not going to buy it. And it's like, it's just a tomato. It's
But it's
just green.
intimidating. But it's
It
totally,
totally.
yeah. So especially if you're like in a part of the world that you've never been and you're looking at all that stuff. So I listen, but I can tell that you are not afraid of anything. And so you're just like, well,
And I'm afraid of spiders, and I don't particularly love boars. We have a lot of boars in this region. They make me nervous. The idea of jumping out of an airplane doesn't sound very much fun, but like I'll heli ski. Like I'll fly around in a helicopter and then ski. That's fine. So, but I have my limits. I can be afraid. I get afraid of things too.
that's amazing. I love it. Okay. Well, so what is Recipe Kick then?
Recipe Kick is kind of the thing we're doing to get out of the shadow of Julia. Julia has been a great thing for us, and like we love our connection. But when you are attached to someone with such a robust legacy, with super fans, we're talking like obsessive super fans, right? Like she's one of the most loved and beloved characters ever in the history of America. Like she just is. And being in that very formidable shadow puts you into the line of fire, might be the right way to say it. You know, people have very strong opinions about what we do at the school. People have very strong opinions about how we teach. People have very strong opinions about Julia. And we just really, as a team, no longer want to be associated with Julia, right? Like it's a property we have, it's a thing we do, but we do so much more than that. And we really want people to see us as something else. We want to be viewed as a top-notch culinary education company. We want to be viewed as a top-notch tourism company, not just, oh, the people who bought Julia Child's house to teach recipe-free cooking. Like that's just such a narrow piece of our overall vision. And so we created Recipe Kick as a way to kind of like, how do you make friends with recipes and get better at utilizing them? But also, how do you kick them to the curb? So it's both your sidekick to recipes and your ticket to not have to use them all the time.
That's neat.
And it was this kind of natural evolution about how we wanted to be perceived. We started doing these tours at other places and they were living on La Peach. So it's like La Peach / Italy. Well, no, but La Peach is a place. Like La Peach really isn't a business, right? La Peach is a place. And so we really needed a kind of new container to exist in. And so building Recipe Kick has kind of become my big labor of love. And we now have an online school where we teach live free classes, usually once or twice a week. And our membership is only $5 a month to watch any recordings and to like be in our community. And we're really loving what we're up to and running these trips all around the world and not just in the south of France in Julia's house.
Okay, wait a minute. You said for $5 a month, I
Yes.
can watch like a couple of classes a week.
Yes. Yeah, for free, you can watch the classes a week. For $5 a month, you can watch the recordings if they don't work with your schedule. So
Oh,
absolutely free. You can watch live classes where we walk through recipe-free cooking. You watch me and my co-star on the show, Kendall, and our other chef instructors that we've trained. We have Brent and Olivia and Santana, and we're in the process of hiring a couple more right now. And we have all sorts of recordings. We've got recipe-free pies and recipe-free cakes. And yes, we have some recipe-free baking. It is possible. We talk about that. We have all sorts of cool classes that are like really fun flavor combinations. And you get to watch someone literally go, well, I have all these ingredients and I have an idea. And how do I get from ingredients to completion?
nice.
So, and you listen to us kind of like talk through what we're thinking as we go, which I think is really fun.
I have three quick follow-up questions before I move on. One of them is, have you ever felt Julia's presence in the house?
Ooh. You know, I don't think she hangs out there. We feel Simone. Simone is the woman who collaborated with Julia on Mastering the Art of French Cooking Volume 1 and 2, Simone Beck. Like, we feel like she's the one who's around. I feel like Julia's like in Cambridge. I think she kind of like left La Peach and was like very kind of, I wouldn't say she was happy to leave, but she had this like beautiful life there with Paul. And once Paul was no longer on this earth, she kind of like, I think she like literally left it and was like complete. But Simone, she's sneaky. She makes noise. She drags chairs. We hear her a lot.
Gosh, I love
Mm,
that. That's
mm,
amazing. I just
hmm
recently was in Washington D.C. here, and they had a Julia Childs in the museum that I was in, and it was fun to
Yeah,
see how her kitchen was set up. So I can picture that. The second thing I wanted to say is, I know you want to separate yourself, but without saying it's Julia Child's home, I'm not. I mean, I wouldn't have known that was the allure for me. So be careful there, right?
absolutely, totally.
You
But the
got to
thing
balance.
is, it's not sustainable. It's not a
Fair.
sustainable business model. Because if you have two people quit, this happens. You have two people cancel last minute. Four people doesn't work. You need six to make the curriculum work. When you get to lower numbers, so it just doesn't work. We can't keep teaching there. If we want to teach what we're teaching, we got to teach in a kitchen that can host 10 to 12 so that when people cancel,
I
we
see.
have a big enough group. Like it just doesn't work. And we have tried, and I will tell you, when we have people cancel, we have to call friends to be plants because you have to have six bodies to make it work.
I feel like there should be a waiting list of people that would play plane and fly over there for that week, right? So people could pay to be on the cancellation list where all you got to do is just get yourself there. So that maybe there's a business model there for you.
There you go.
But you casually mentioned my TV show. Tell me more about that because this is kind of a big deal.
Yeah, so it's so funny. It feels like such a lifetime ago now because it was in 2022 that it aired and we never ended up getting renewed. And we have people ask us, like, I don't know, I probably get 20 messages a day. When's season 2 coming? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe someday, somewhere.
But tell the audience. So this was the Magnolia Network. This was
Yes.
Joanna Gaines, which
Yep.
most people are familiar with them. So that's a big shift for you. You get a phone call, you get an email. They
You
come into
get
your
an email. I got
okay.
an email from a production company who was trying to develop shows for Magnolia Network. So when a new network is coming up, they basically reach out to production companies they know and say, hey, develop some shows for us. And we kind of just got found that way. It was totally out of the blue. I just got an email one day from a production company saying, hey, I think you'd be great for Magnolia. We need to get them 5 shows in the next X amount of months. Would you be willing to be screen tested? And I kind of looked at my husband and was like, uh, is this real? It's not. I didn't actually think it was real initially. I thought it was a hoax, but then I looked up the production company, and lo and behold, it's the production company that produces Diners, Drive-ins, and Dives, which is a massive show. I mean, it's Guy Fieri's like breakout hit, and now he's a huge entity, right? But like that has won multiple Emmys. It's had the same production team since the beginning. I think they've run like 37 seasons. It's just, and so I was like, well, I guess it's legit. And yeah, and it was called La Pitchoune Cooking in France, which I never liked the title, admittedly, because La Pitchoune is hard to say. So when you are explaining, like, Tracy's over at a friend's house, right? Going, I just watched this great cooking show. It's called La Pitchoune. And like, just that's what people hear. They're like, wait, what? And it's a mouthful, right? La Pitchoune Cooking in France. And I get it. They wanted it to be clear that it was at Julia's house and they couldn't use the word Julia Child because of how that is protected. Like ultimately, yeah, I mean, it was a great thing we did. We filmed from 2021 and in fall of 2021 to film our pilot. And then we got greenlit and we filmed the remaining 6 episodes in the spring of 2022 and it aired in the fall of 2022. And our lives changed overnight. The business took off almost too fast. And it was really great, but also like very fast. We were selling too fast. We couldn't meet the demand. And there was a lot of people who like kind of just booked without reading what we actually were, even though they watched the show. And so we ended up with this like very cool new clientele, and like some loved it and some didn't. And it kind of was both like the best and worst thing that ever happened to us. Like it really took us into a whole nother echelon and it made us like known quantities in the United States, which was great. And it opened us up to a lot of really nasty stuff too. Yeah, really nasty. Like dozens of like death threat type emails. That happened when I bought the house too. So
Because you were messing with the integrity of her legacy. What?
a lot of pearl clutching of like, how dare you not teach recipes? How dare you do that in the grande dame of cooking's house? Well, of course. And I always thought that it was more respectful to not teach her recipes because of her doing such a great job of that. But again, she's so popular. She's like this nobody says they hate Julia Child. Like that doesn't
True.
fall out of people's mouths.
True.
Like there's no one who's like, I find her detestable.
I see.
She's this very gregarious, at least on TV. I don't know. I never met her, so I don't know what she was really like, but she was this gregarious, kind of silly, cattywampus in a lot of ways human who like was just kind of all over the place and like in a way that was really relatable for especially when you were learning to cook. So I think there's so much about her power that people are drawn to, but also the people who are drawn to it, like the super fandom, there's a lot of like negativity. I mean, like I had a food publisher who I had looked up to for eons, like a big one for eons. I really looked up to her for her business model. I really loved what she had done and created. And she just like ripped into me on a comment on Magnolia Network's Instagram page. This is someone who I've like, literally I was in food partially because of this woman. And
Wow.
just like, I'm unlikable and I seem like a bitch and like all of these things. And she was obsessed with Julia. And she just was, I don't know if she was jealous of me or she just didn't like my personality. And I wrote her and said, hey, I'm a neurodivergent queer person and I, I might not be that likable to you. Like I have ADHD and autism. I'm not always that likable or great on camera. Like, you're right. I'm not. Now what? Also, that really hurt my feelings. And she was horrified I had seen it. And I was like, of course I've seen it. I'm just a person. I'm a person who's on TV, but I'm also just a person who's like living her life, who's married, has a kid.
So you're somebody that you are following and that means a lot to you is saying those things to you. And she says, I didn't think that you would ever read it. So how does that sit with you now? Are you done or did you make peace with that?
I think you have to make peace with it. A lot of the other castmates, so like there's four of us in the show. It's about all four of us. It's two couples, me and my husband and my dear friend Kendall and her husband Ross. And it's one of those things. Like when you put yourself in the public eye, you're going to get scrutiny. It's impossible. And when you are 6'1" and loud and big and doing big things, you're just going to get both negative and positive attention. And I would read all the reviews. My castmates wouldn't. They're like, you shouldn't do that to yourself. And I'm like, I'd rather know what people are saying than not know. Like the idea of like someone talking about me behind my back is like my worst nightmare. Doing it to my face, go right ahead. Go right ahead. Tell me you think I'm ugly. Let's go ahead. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
My favorite always is to look at the Amazon reviews because you can see what else they buy.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah.
And what else they've reviewed. So it's like 1 star, La Pitchoune's the dumbest show on the face of the earth. 5 stars for the ugliest caftan I've ever seen. It's like, well, you're just not my person, and that's okay.
It is interesting because I do a little bit on TikTok and I will read everything and it will go from like I love to you should get your bottom teeth fixed. Have you considered that? Like I can't believe the intimacy that some of the people like they believe they're in relationship with you. And
Yeah,
I'm that
absolutely.
person though that just said you're totally right. I should totally fix my bottom teeth. I just don't take it too seriously. Uh,
No.
but for you, so you're building this kind of, empire, if you will. So you do have to see all of that so you'll understand how it's landing. When I think about kind of just you've been on this rocket ship and so now you have not been renewed for another season. Would you want to be? Or do you think that that was just a good one and done for you?
I would love to keep making television. I love a good, like, slow burn television show. And I'm watching Meghan of Sussex, right? Going through a lot of this, but on a much higher level at the moment because her show just premiered. And it's like, it's completely innocuous. It's just a cute little show of her like making silly little things. It's just a slow burn of beauty. It doesn't really have any purpose, and that's okay. But she's just getting ripped to shreds. And so I think for me, I love making television. I loved working with the crew. They were so much fun. They've become some of my best friends. Like I was a born performer. I always wanted to be a performer. So making television is kind of like performing as yourself, which is really interesting.
You need to be on TV.
Yeah, ultimately I loved it and I would do it again in a heartbeat, but I would want to make sure I had a little bit more control. I think that desire to lean into the Julia angle, if you lean too hard, you go too far and it pisses off the wrong people. If you can just tap it and then move out of it, it's much easier for people, especially naysayers, to relate to you. And I think that they leaned a little too heavy into it and too heavy into the relationship of the clients with Julia. And a lot of it wasn't actually real. Like a lot of the clients don't come to the school for Julia. They come to learn recipe-free cooking. So when you lean too hard into that, you get this inauthenticity, which really bums me out for my clients because a bunch of people are like, oh, your guests aren't likable. I'm like, dude, they're not camera trained. They're literally just people. Like I'm the one who chose to be on a television show. They kind
They're
of just got
off.
stuck there because we were filming and they agreed to it. But it's different, right? Like I knew I was going to be like this for weeks on end. This is their vacation and there's a camera in their face.
That's
So
right.
I think, yes, I would do it again. And I was a producer on the show, but I would really want to drive a little bit more of the narrative and be a little bit more in charge of it and be a little bit more in charge of how I'm presented on television, like what I wear, how I talk. There was a lot of be more gentle, be more feminine? Could you be more quiet? Could you wear a pretty floaty dress? Lots of florals. And I do have those things in my wardrobe, but that's like a slice of who I am. And I think that that has created it's very hard for people to deal with the real me. Like the real me's a little bit coarse, pretty blunt. And I've always been that way. And the show presents me as this like kind of ethereal goddess who's like super motherly. And I'm like, that is a piece of me, but like a very narrow slice. And so, yes. So, yes, I would do it again, but I would really want to be able to be myself and like drive a little bit more of the story and be a little bit more, not like the whole thing. Like, I'm not a television producer by trade, right? Like, I trust people to weave the stories together for me, but like making sure that it's the right angle and that I'm not chameleoning
That,
myself.
let's go with it. I like it.
Yeah, I like it. Like to something that I'm not, right? Like
I
yeah,
see.
that's my only reticence.
So what's the next shift for you? So what's the future?
Oh my gosh. Great question. A lot, right? Like we are just in this huge period of upheaval. So we currently run the Courageous Cooking School at La Peach as like one piece of our business. And that is essentially shutting down. It'll still be available, but before you could just book like one spot, right? And so, as I mentioned earlier, it's not really a sustainable business model. So the Courageous Cooking School will exist, but it will only be bookable by groups of 6 to 8. And you have to find a group and bring them yourself so that
Yeah.
you're in charge. But that's a much harder sell, right? That we're not going to get 26 weeks of that a year like we used to. It's much easier to only have to find a friend to bring or come by yourself. And so we are taking the Courageous Cooking School curriculum. It's going to stay what it has been. It'll be available. And that's a decision we just made a week ago. We thought we were closing it for good. And what I realized is that there will still be people who want it. And I still want to be able to give that experience to people if they want it. But other than that, the house will just be available to rent. So we've decided to keep it there. And we're opening a farm to table recipe free experience at my house in Gross. We're actually like opening a farm where we have 5 acres here, about 3.5 of which are farmable. And we're going to plant tons of vegetables and have chickens and goats and ducks and be able to have people who come to Gross and like come hang out with us in my farm kitchen. It can host 12 people, my farm kitchen. And we're going to be able to have like a bigger group with more dynamism while also maintaining the Courageous Cooking School. And that'll be kind of like the new masterclass for Recipe Kick in Provence will be at my house and on our farm. And we're opening a restaurant.
What?
Yeah.
What?
We've owned the lease for 2 years. I've been paying the lease for 2 whole years. And it's been so hard. If you think that construction is hard and hiring a contractor is hard, try doing it in a foreign country that is known for it depends as their ethos and tomorrow as their ethos. And we just had to fire a contractor and hire a new one. And I think we're like 3 weeks away from actually being done on construction. And this construction has been going on for 18 months.
Wow. That's a lot.
So we're going to be opening a restaurant this summer. And it was always this thing we wanted to do. But I mean, I closed on it. I bought the space. You have to buy spaces in France. You can't just lease it. It's a totally different business model on how people work here. If there's been a business, you like buy the pre-existing business, but not really. It's called a fond de commerce. It's a very weird thing. But I've had the restaurant since January of 2023. And it is now spring
Yeah.
of 2020.
Oh my gosh. So you're gonna okay, so you have a lot of shifts then.
Yes.
So I want to just go back. So I think that I would be more apt to come if I could bring 6 to 8 friends than I would be to be on my own.
So
I
there you
think,
go.
yeah. So that actually makes me more excited because,
I love that.
yeah. So I think that has legs. But you could also go and rent the house. But you go.
Absolutely.
So you've got. Okay. So what else? What else is it? Before we wrap, I want to make sure that before we hang up that everybody knows how to find you and all the things. What else would be a shift that you'd like to talk about?
I think those are the big ones. I mean, for us, it's just been, and for me especially, it's been what do I want my legacy to be? And I don't want my legacy to be I'm the person who bought Julia Child's house.
Okay.
It's like a very incomplete thing for me. And I think that some people would be perfectly content with that. It does not work for me. It's something I've tried on, and it really is kind of like it made me feel really small. And so I think that ultimately, because she was so big, it's like it doesn't matter how big I am. I'm never probably going to be as famous as her, and I don't even care if I'm as famous as her. That's that level of fame where everyone knows what you look like and everybody can recognize you in public because you're so recognizable. I mean, that's next level, right? That's when paparazzi drives you crazy. And she's lucky she didn't have that. But that's the type of stuff that you get into. And so I think for me, it's more about realizing that like what we've created, this method of recipe-free cooking, it's like the first pedagogy ever to teach cooking that is like backed by science and has been validated by multiple PhDs in education as being like the best way to teach cooking. And I think that I want that to be the thing that kind of drives me now, that like we are teaching people to cook better for the betterment of humanity, to decrease the amount of labor, especially when that labor falls disproportionately on women. Like it's like 65% of all meals in the United States are cooked by women. And I just think that I'm like really ready for that. And we're really ready to kind of let La Peach be La Peach and let the house be the house and let us be ourselves. And like, instead of being like the people who are the carriers of this house. And those are the big shifts. And it's this shift for me because I've done this now for like 8, 9 years. Like it's been a while, like 9 years since I moved here. And so yeah, that's a huge shift after a decade.
You shifted me in this conversation 30 minutes ago. I was thinking, oh, wow. I mean, like we know you because of Julia Child's Home and like this is a risk. And I'm sitting here now going, oh my God, you're doing exactly the right thing. I had to be brought around to that, but I totally get it because everything you said is true. Like that, it's not sustainable for so many reasons. You've articulated it beautifully, so I'm not even going to restate it. But well done. I'm anxious. And for the audience, if you are in Tulsa, you will actually be here doing a book signing. Kathy is going to host you, I believe. I don't know if we know details, but it's middle May,
Middle of
maybe.
May, and we'll be doing an event at Anybody's Guest, which is a store in downtown, I think.
Listen, it's a store on the corner of 11th and Lewis, and it's an amazing location. You're going to love going there. She started this store with her business partners Joe and Todd, and with the sole purpose of creating a space to bring people together, to create community. And so anybody's guest, around the table. The store is beautiful. Yeah, it'll be fun. So we'll make sure I'll blow it up on my social media when you're going to be here, so people can run by and meet you. But how can people find you? So whether they want to pay their $5 and watch the cooking class, they want to buy the book, they want to rent La Peach, how can people find you?
Oh my gosh, the easiest way, weirdly enough, is at ok-perfect.com because that is where like we house all of our projects, right? So the link to La Peach is there, the link to Recipe Kick is there, the link to Detour Our Restaurant is there, the link to my book tour is there. That's kind of like the overarching hospitality brand. And so that's the easiest place to find us. And also I'm on Instagram, at Makenna Held, at recipekick.tv, and at LaPeachFR.
Nice. Well, we'll be sure and put all that in the show notes. What a pleasure. It's been so nice to meet you. Now I know why Kathy's like, no, you have to know her. You have to do your podcast.
I so
So
appreciate that. I'll have to
yeah,
give Kathy a thank you note. Thank you so much, Tracy. This was great. I love this.
so I'm just cheering you on, sister. Well done. And I'm anxious to see what's next for you. It'll be fun to watch.
Thank you. I'm anxious to see what's next too. It's it's a whole thing. I'm still nervous. I'm not gonna lie. Every day I go, is this really the right thing? And I'm like, it's the only choice. Stay the course. But man, big
I love
moves are
it.
bumpy.
I love it. I love it. And I'm hoping to come to your restaurant.
That sounds good. Well, happy to have you.
Thank you.
That's all for this episode of Shift Out Loud. A special thank you to our guest, Makenna Held. Be sure to connect with her online and check out her upcoming cookbook. We'll have all the details in the show notes. If you found this episode valuable, be sure to subscribe and share. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on Shift Out Loud.